I think most of us, whenever we've applied for jobs, we've heard some of these hook lines from recruiters that your experience is not enough, or there is a gap between the skills we require versus the skills you have learned formerly. So there are some of these lines which we have heard rather commonly. The most common complaint being time. If a job description says 5 years of experience and I have three, I cannot magically buy that time back. But what I can surely decide is what is that something? What is that extra edge I wish to put into my years? What is that magical something? And that realization fundamentally changed the way I started looking at professional certifications. 2022, after the pandemic and after a period of quite some difficult experiences personally and professionally, I started looking at my career a little differently. I realized that simply going to work every day and allowing the years to accumulate wasn't enough for me. If time was going to pass anyway, I wanted those years to represent more than I worked. I wanted to be able to say, I worked, and while I was working, I was also learning. So I made a conscious decision. Every year, a certain portion of what I earn would go back into developing me professionally. And that's how I started thinking about what I now call my CPD Fund, Continuous Professional Development Fund, and today I encourage my students to create one too. The name CPD was influenced by one of the accreditation bodies from where I had done my masters in TEFL TESOL, because CPD is also a professional accreditation body based in UK and they have multiple courses. So I decided that I would create my own personal CPD fund from where I could always decide that according to the budget, these are the courses I want to pursue so that I can perform better at my workplace and bring new dimensions and new angles to the way I interpret my work while performing better. From my own experiences, I tell my students, whenever you receive your salary, please enjoy it. Please go shopping. Go to that restaurant you've always wanted to visit. Buy something for yourself. Contribute at home. Experience the satisfaction of being able to reduce some of your parents' financial burden. Start saving. Start thinking about investments and your financial portfolio. All of those things matter. But while you're dividing that salary into different priorities, create one more little fund, your CPD fund, because we regularly invest in things we hope will appreciate in value. Why shouldn't we systematically invest in increasing our own professional value? When I say CPD fund, I mean something very specific. I don't include every book I buy. I read, I observe, I listen, I explore, I network. I learn from people, conversations, and experiences. Those things are absolutely invaluable. But my CPD fund is specifically reserved for credible certifications, accreditations, and recognized professional development programs. Why so? Because there is a practical reality to career development. I may have read 20 brilliant books this year. They may completely transform the way I think and I process life and my training methods. But unfortunately, I cannot walk into an interview or a training room carrying tangible, verifiable evidence of everything those 20 books taught me. Meanwhile, a credible certification can provide me evidence that I took structured learning, I underwent structured learning processes in a certain area. But there's something else. The certification is tangible. It's the learning that forces you to do intangible things. You read, listen, observe, interact, practice, complete assignments. You demonstrate competencies. You end up meeting professionals might have never met otherwise. You network. And sometimes, the biggest of them all, you unlearn. So when I invest a certain amount in a professional program, I am not paying for a PDF with my name printed on it. I want to invest in a structured learning experience that leaves me with a credible professional credential at the end, because some of your learning has to be visible, some of your development should be demonstrable, and some of your growth should be verifiable. My everyday learning feeds my mind, while my CPD investments build my professional portfolio and identity. And this is where my favorite piece of advice to my students comes from. You cannot buy time, but you can invest in skills. Imagine finding a fantastic job vacancy. You read the description, 5 years of experience required, and you have two. What will you do? Go to a shop? Bhaiya 3 saal experience de dena please. Unfortunately, Amazon hasn't started delivering that yet. You cannot buy those years. But before you close that job description, keep reading. What else does it require? Communication, develop it. Presentation skills, develop it. Leadership skills, learn. Digital tools, learn. AI, learn. A particular professional competency, start working towards it. You cannot control how quickly 5 years pass, but you have enormous control over what you are going to be putting into those 5 years. Certification changed for me as a trainer became particularly important when I started pursuing professional trainer certifications. I wasn't completely new to training. I had already taught, facilitated sessions, and worked with different kinds of learners. But certification helped me understand the science and the structure I had sometimes learned intuitively and practically through experience. Instead of only asking which activity should I conduct, I started asking what is my learning objective? What gap am I trying to address here? Why am I choosing this particular methodology with this particular class? Can I repeat the same methodology with another batch? How will I know whether learning is actually happening? Concepts such as training needs analysis, adult learning principles, instructional design, facilitation methodologies, assessment, feedback, training evaluation gave me frameworks and terminologies for things I had encountered practically. And perhaps most importantly, learning showed me how much more there was to learn. Business professional development helps you get out of your professional bubble. There's another benefit of certification programs that I think we underestimate. They expose you to what is changing around you. You can become extremely experienced at doing something in a particular way. But while you are becoming better at your way of doing it, the profession itself may be changing. There may be new research, new technologies, new systems, modified processes, new methodologies, new approaches, and entirely new conversations happening within your industry. A good professional program brings you back into those conversations, and suddenly you find yourself thinking, oh, people are doing this differently now. There's another approach. The system has changed. Or sometimes, wait, something I have been doing for years isn't considered the best practice anymore. And that's valuable because experience teaches us enormously, but experience can also make us comfortable with what we already know. Structured professional development interrupts that comfort. And there's another advantage I particularly value. It gives you access to people. A good professional program doesn't only give you content, it gives you a community. You may suddenly find yourself interacting with trainers, facilitators, HR professionals, learning and development professionals, subject matter experts, consultants, business leaders, and professionals from industries completely different from yours. And now I have a perfectly legitimate reason to shamelessly talk to them. This is how we see this issue. What do you think? This happens in my classroom. Does something similar happen in your organization? I don't completely agree with this approach. How do you see it? How does your industry handle this? And professional growth isn't only about expressing your opinion about something, it is also about asking, why does somebody else see the same problem completely differently? Maybe they are from another industry or another school of thought. Maybe they work with another demographic. Maybe they have 20 years of experience, or perhaps they are beginning their career and therefore aren't carrying some of the assumptions that experienced professionals sometimes end up accumulating. Every conversation adds another perspective, and gradually your thinking moves from this is how we do it in our organization or my organization to these are the different ways this problem can be approached. And that's a very different level of professional thinking. So, yes, the certificate at the end matters, but sometimes the value is everything that happens on the way to the certificate. New knowledge, updated practice, the questions, the disagreements, the conversations, the people, perspectives they carry, and the network you carry forward after the certification. And that's why a good certification is more than a credential, it can be a passport into conversations that your existing jobs might have never exposed you to. Certifications or certificates aren't magic. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I'm absolutely not advocating certificate collection. You can have 10 certificates hanging on your wall and still struggle to connect with 10 people sitting in the classroom because training eventually comes down to people. Can you listen? Can you observe? Can you accept feedback? Can you recognize when something isn't working? Can you come back tomorrow just as motivated or excited as you were today and try to do it better tomorrow? For me, certification gives credibility. Learning builds knowledge. Practice builds competence. Experience develops wisdom. And you need all four. The interview advantage is where continuous professional development changes the way you can present your experience. There's a difference between telling an interviewer, I have 5 years of experience, and saying that during those 5 years, I continuously invested in developing myself alongside my work. One says, I worked for 5 years. The other says, I worked and I learned for 5 years. You were applying what you knew while simultaneously expanding what you knew. So you are no longer presenting only the number of years you've accumulated. You're presenting what you did with those years. And that's exactly why I tell my students don't just accumulate years of experience, add value to those years. Please show evolution in terms of certifications, accreditations, and above all, a solid skill set. Ask them about the EMIs, and this is exactly where I become absolutely shameless while expressing it to my students. I tell my students, ask about the EMI. Suppose a credible certification costs around 40,000 rupees. Don't look at 40,000 immediately and conclude, oh no, this isn't for people like me. Ask, what's the EMI? Can I pay in installments? Is there a scholarship? Is there a discount? Can I plan for it 6 months from now? Can I realistically afford it without putting myself under financial pressure? And most importantly, is this program actually worth 40,000? Who recognizes it? What am I going to learn? What will I have to demonstrate? And does it align with where I want my career to go? Because paying 40,000 rupees for a shiny PDF isn't CPD, that's certificate shopping. CPD should be counted as calculated professional investment and not a financial burden. Let me tell you my yoga theory of career growth. Sometimes seeing something slightly beyond your present reach is useful. It's almost like yoga. You see somebody doing a complicated pose and you think, मेरे से नहीं होगा. Not my cup of tea. ये हमसे ना हो पाएगा. But you don't buy flexibility, you build it. You stretch, you practice, you strengthen yourself, and gradually your reach increases. Careers can work exactly the same way. Maybe you cannot afford that program today. Maybe you aren't eligible for that role today. Today. That's the important word here. What would you have to do to change so that you could reach it possibly the next year? Sometimes something being slightly outside your reach gives you a reason and an impetus to increase your reach. Please do not confuse professional certifications with all learning. My CPD fund may be reserved specifically for recognized certifications and accreditations, but my learning certainly isn't. Sometimes life becomes Monday to Friday work or Monday to Saturday work, Sunday recover, Monday repeat. And somewhere between working and recovering from working, 5 years disappear. We haven't explored, networked, or met people outside our professional circles. We haven't exposed ourselves to another discipline. And that's highly unfortunate because you never know where two completely unrelated skills might eventually meet. Steve Jobs' calligraphy experience is probably one of the best known examples of connecting the dots. He studied calligraphy because he found it fascinating. At that point, calligraphy, computers. What was the connection? Years later, his exposure to typography, spacing, and typefaces influenced the typography of the Macintosh. The dots connected much later. And careers often work like that. Something you learn today or get certified for may appear completely irrelevant. 5 years later, you may adapt to it, modify it, combine it with another skill, utilize it, and suddenly it becomes part of your professional identity and advantage. And that's what a good certification program also does. Suhas wasn't completely wrong, which brings me to someone I never imagined I'd defend. सुहास from Three Idiots. Engineering की, फिर MBA किया, फिर banking में चला गया. And we're supposed to think, what was the point? Now, please don't misunderstand me. There were many other reasons to make fun of Suhas, and it was well deserved. But maturity has made me reconsider that particular part. Today's careers aren't necessarily linear. Engineering may teach you one way of solving problems, management may teach you another, banking may expose you to an entirely different industry. 10 years later, all three things may converge in an opportunity nobody could have predicted. A non-linear career isn't necessarily a directionless career. The important question is, can you connect the dots using the certification skills that you have learned? Don't just build experience, build range. Every discipline gives you another lens. Every professional program can give you another community. Every workshop can expand your network. Every skill gives you another tool. And sometimes a tool sits quietly in your professional toolkit for 5 years until one day you think, oh, wait, I know exactly where I can use this. So, yes, it is important to build expertise, but also build range, build curiosity, networks, transferable skills, perspectives. Because sometimes your professional edge doesn't come from knowing one thing better than everybody else. It comes from being able to connect things that everybody else thought were unrelated. As we conclude, certification is not the end, it's part of the growth. So, today, when I think about certification, I don't simply see it as another document to add to my resume. I definitely don't see it as proof that I've suddenly become an expert in a given field. For me, a good certification represents something much bigger. It represents a deliberate decision to grow, to step aside something I already know, to understand the science and structure behind what I already do, to expose myself to new trends, new technologies, new systems, and new perspectives, to interact with professionals I may never have otherwise met, to question some of my existing ideas, to learn, to practice, and sometimes, or rather many a times, to unlearn. The certificate at the end may be tangible, but the real growth happens in everything you do to earn it. And that's why I believe a certificate can add a different dimension to your years of experience. Because while the calendar is giving you years, you are deliberately adding value to those years. So don't pursue certifications simply to collect certifications. Choose them carefully, check their credibility, accreditation, recognition, invest in them wisely, participate fully, and also network shamelessly, and most importantly, apply what you learn. Because ultimately, a certificate can strengthen your resume, but a good certification program should strengthen the professional behind that resume. And perhaps that and that alone is the real value of certification. It doesn't replace experience, it helps you become more intentional about the professional you're becoming while you gain that experience.